else.
Christmas.
Exactly. Exactly. And I love how everybody else adds to this is that we can all, we remember a story. There's an anecdote around this box. I think if we look at, there's a meme around Stork or Rama that's in the fridge, and after the coming out of the, what is it called? This new Netflix thing. What is it called again? Squid Games. Yes, almost there. Almost there. But yes, what would you choose? Or it was what is in the box, you know? Do you die or do you live? But I think how important brands are is that you already know at the top of your mind that that box reminds you of Christmas. You know, that stalk reminds you of that scuffed tin with rice or chicken. It could be an ice cream, it could be just leftover dog bones, it could be anything, you know. So that's the importance of brands and how they actually, you know, are catalysts of conversation and actually how they make their ways into our lives. So it's quite important to have a story around how our stories through brands and how today's discussion is actually going to touch on that. So first and foremost, thank you very much for being here. Welcome, Abey let's try this again, Mokgwatsane. There we go. And Thembi Sehloho, welcome, lovely guests. We are honored to actually host and facilitate today's session. Now, I think Pat did allude to the fact that Mr. Abey is actually an outgoing candidate or leader at Vodacom. And going to, and it was I don't know, I overheard him say it was actually supposed to come out later, but we just so happened to know earlier that he's leaving. But with that said, I think there was something I'd love to quote where he said, the key attribute that I'm looking for in any company that I work for is whether my purpose is aligned to what the company's purpose is. I found this very true and very important because each brand in itself has an identity. And I think to kickstart us in terms of brand purpose and in terms of brands, how do you actually associate or how do you actually identify to say that this is the brand purpose of certain brands?
Thank you so much for the invite. Hi, guys. It's an amazing privilege to be here, so really appreciate your time today. I think some companies tell you what their purpose is. Some companies don't haven't articulated it in terms of what their purpose is, but you get a sense of at least what the potential of their purpose can be.
Yeah.
And certainly that was my, you know, when I moved to Vodacom, I knew that this was a business that had an incredible amount of power to transform people's lives at all levels of society.
Sure. And
while I wasn't completely clear on where the purpose was, in fact, we only really crystallized our purpose in April 2019. I had a sense that this is the kind of business that I could be part of and be part of its own innovation and invention of its purpose.
Thank you for that. Thembi, I do know also you're very much a blueprint individual. Yeah. So I heard blueprint, I heard it before, but after I had an interview with Thembi, it was blueprint all the way. I even had to go look now for brands that I worked with. Where's your blueprint? Do you mind? Can we just have it? But you also talk about the brand promise. And it goes back to the purpose of the brand. But now, how does one then, and I think we'll go into heritage brands because very much so, we've had a conversation around heritage brands and Vodacom being one that's, you know, pegged many of us. I don't know how many people are using Vodacom. Okay?
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thanks. The ones that are not, I'll come speak to you later.
But I think it's quite important, and maybe if you could share the importance of a blueprint and actually having an identity as a brand, because that's how you find people trusting you as a brand, and how you actually are able to live longer with people that are actually consuming your brand.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming through to listen to us, and thank you for having us again, Nompumelelo. It's so much fun talking to you guys. I think for me the most exciting, I like what Abey said, that it's an alignment thing. Like, although we don't say it, you know, when I go for an interview, I always say, what is it about this place that will resonate with me? So innately there are things that we carry, which is our DNA, that define who we are. So the greatest thing about being a marketer is that you get to give birth and mold something you know, and present it to society or present it to South Africa so that they see it in a certain way. So you're almost like a parent, like that, you know, we all raise our children and we want them to be seen or to walk a certain way. It's funny, as a mom, you're like, walk straight, do that, do that. Branding is all about that as well. It's about how this brand is gonna come through and show up in society. So, I mean, I spoke a lot about the DNA of the brand, where we, you know, you are defining this thing. So you really do sit in the boardroom and you say, how do you want this brand to feel, to look? What are the values of this brand? What are the personalities of this brand? Who are you talking to? And how are you going to show up? So that's quite important, because that's what's going to really define the purpose of this brand. Your values and your personalities and your emotions will define what your values are aligning to. So ultimately, that is the guidebook that you use to navigate this brand to your consumers. Because you want them to feel something when they see this thing. You want them to remember it a certain way. Like you talked about Choice Assorted and Christmas. It's a link that you have to that brand. So the DNA of the brand is quite important. And I think I hump on it because I think it's quite an important thing for every brand to have. Because as marketers, we move. Here is Abey, he was at Vodacom, and he spoke about the purpose of Vodacom. Tomorrow is at Investec. So it's very important that what he leaves behind is a solid foundation for this brand, because you also can't keep changing your brand every single minute, because consumers then are confused who you are. So especially when you want to build a brand, a heritage brand can last up to 100 years. People cannot be confused about what this brand stands for or what this brand means to them. The brand can evolve, because you know, you either evolve or you die, but the brand cannot change its DNA. So we can put on the weave, but your DNA doesn't necessarily change.
I love that, because I think brands should aim to be freshly consistent and not consistently fresh. You can't be trying to be cool all the time. What you need to do is find what your core is and make that cool in its expression.
Let's try that again. Consistently fresh and not freshly consistent, or vice versa.
Brands should not be consistently fresh, right? They should be freshly consistent.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So, I mean, I think there was a similarity in what you guys have mentioned in terms of, like you said, Abey will be Vodacom, then at the next, brand. But with that, I think you're talking about values, and values are almost, they modified and reformed, but they stay the same. Principle stays the same. And that's what's carried through, you know, from different brands. I almost think that we'll know that maybe who's the marketing manager here, there's clarity here, because it is you as an individual who's also imparting that in terms of leadership. But how do you find, as leaders, and I suppose maybe we'll start with Abey, how do you then start actually building a brand that actually can tell the story of South Africa?
Yeah, I think you start by going to where the customer is at, you know, the heart and mind. Because branding happens, it doesn't happen on TV
Sure.
and in magazines and in talks.
The above the line.
Branding happens in people's minds,
Yeah.
right? So I think if you are rooted in very deep customer understanding and insights, you know from which point you need to tell your story. Because that's the best way then to be able to tell engaging stories that are going to, you know, remain consistent in how they're engaging with customers over time. So I always say, like, that's the customer is the beginning and ending of what we do. All our work, no matter how much money you have, at the end of the day is really about how someone's going to play back what they think your brand is and what that brand message and positioning in their brain and their hearts makes them do. That's all it is.
And maybe to you, Thembi, can I throw that question to you? Because it's quite a filled one.
Yeah, when you asked the question, I was like, sure, that's a very, very good question. I think personally as a marketer, I mean, I'm going to repeat a little bit of what Abey's saying around, if you don't start with the consumer, you will not end with the consumer. That was like marketing 101 for me. But I think what I always focus on is the human truth, right? So the human truth will always be true. And I use the analogy of a father when they have a daughter, they all want to have a gun. whether your rendition of a gun is a, is sweep or whatever you wanna use, But the truth of the matter is, you can have 1,000 men in this room from different countries, and you say to them, you have a daughter today, what do they all say? They all say they want to own a gun because they want to protect the daughter. But it's not really about the physical gun, it's the emotion that the man has around the daughter, right? And I always say that if you understand that human truth that you want to tap into, then you can customize the human truth to where you are. So the gun is different when you're in Ghana, the gun is different when you're in KZN, when you're in Lesotho. But I always say that the greatest marketing work I have done is when we have fully understand what the human truth is around the story. That obviously links back to our brand. And we are in branding to make money. That obviously links back to, is this going to make people buy more of me? Because they actually get what I say and they understand what I'm saying. So it's really a cycle. And I'm going to repeat that. For me, the greatest marketing work that I've ever done is when the human truth was being articulated and almost paired with my brand.
Sure. I think it goes back to the podcast session we had, and I think when you matched the Gucci and the Louis Vuitton, rather, I loved it because I think when I went actually to the store to see Samp, and I was like, actually, this is what you were talking about, is that human truth is that I thought of lobola and I thought, actually, how do you simplify this? It's convenient because I know that I don't have to wake up in the morning to put stamp for later on at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. But now, we're telling the story, and what role, though, do brands have in society in telling and communicating, the brand story or the brand truth? Like I said, I think we started by these choices sorted that became a catalyst of conversation that we all can relate to. But what is the brand, what is its role in society, And when we think of it like that, it's quite powerful that we can actually have a conversation around Omarasks. We can have conversation, and we can relate because it's brands that we actually grew up with, Either or.
I think you should go first so I can think about the answer.
I think brands coexist in society, and I think brands play a pivotal role in shaping how we see ourselves and how maybe as brands, how we want society to see themselves going forward. And I'll use an example. When I say they live within us, we're going through COVID, and it was very important for brands to feel what we're going through and show up in a way that they are feeling what we're going through and narrate the story of recovery and narrate the story of where we want to be. So I see brands, I don't know, as people, as beings in society, and their role is to either preserve our stories, reshape our stories, tell our stories going forward, and kind of really walk generations with the society that it's in. So that's really how I see brands.
I was going to add to say, I think there was in one of the course modules in television and screen arts, but they were showing how movies were actually showing what society was like, and it was a comparison between, do movies actually tell us how society is going to be, or vice versa? And I would ask maybe, Abey, do you say that? And going back to what Thembi has mentioned, is that do brands then sort of are leaders? Or do they take on what is happening, in society and kind of then bring it and kind of make it big in a sense?
Brands absolutely have to reflect our aspiration as a people. And Thembi is absolutely correct. They're an extension of ourselves. They're within us. So we use brands to communicate things that we believe in, the things that matter to us most, right? So no one is going to drive a BMW if they believe that a BMW is not for the type of person they want to be portrayed as, unless you win it. I think brands have a massive role to play in projecting where society is going. And obviously, you can't present where society is going without some sort of context around where we at. So I think if you think about primetime television. Half of primetime television is advertising. So you can't tell me that brands are not forming people's perception about what the norms of societies are. And every brand has to take a position in terms of, this is what I'm going to project, these are the type of people I'm trying to attract. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Nando's was all our favorite brand. Even as black people in South Africa, we're like, yes, I love this brand that can be like so gregarious, that can take on really sensitive topics in society. Some people were overly sensitive about those things, but for the majority, we're like, yes, you can do an ad about the fact that the minister's cars, everyone, there's like 17, there's a whole kind of row of cars going to a particular meeting, because that's what happens in society, and someone needs to call it out. It's cool, it's funny, and it makes sense. All of a sudden, they're on a platform where Gareth Cliff speaks down on the experience of a black person's experience of racism, something that all of us feel very deeply about, and all of a sudden it's like, yes, sis, no, this is too far. So it's not always going to work for you, but I think we've got to respect that Nando's took a position, and sometimes that position is not going to work out for you. So I think brands can facilitate how we want the world to be, and they can reflect us. And the point around COVID is very well made. I think every single brand in South Africa jumped onto that wagon to say, we can help you, because they needed to say that. We all needed that. We needed to hear that from every single source, influential source in society.
But I think I just want to build on what you said, because I think that's what I was cautioning my team on, is that whilst it's relevant and everybody wants to say something about it, let us not forget what the brand stands for and what our brand strategy and purpose is.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't fit in, it's okay for you as a brand to sit and watch.
Yeah.
You don't have to be involved in every conversation, because sometimes then you lose yourself in that conversation. I work on Tastic. I can never be a Nando's any day.
Yeah.
But I can be something bigger than a Nando's every day.
Yeah.
So the COVID story, if it doesn't fit with you, sit down.
That is not the thing.
Yeah.
Can I give an example that we at Vodacom, we are a very safe brand. Like, our brand is about everyone gets together, we accept every single shade and color and age. We are a very strong family brand that's deeply rooted in South Africa, that believes in an optimistic future of the world and the country, and we using our technology to connect people to a better future. Very clear. Sometimes we try and push the edge a little bit, because that space can sometimes become a bit bland, because you're not really you're not able to take on any like really tricky and sensitive issues that are going to kind of rile up emotional response. So we have a platform called Vodacom, which is probably now the biggest loyalty program in the country. And our Vodacom campaign this year was, bless yourself and get all of these prizes and benefits, right? So we knew that was flying close to the sun, because we were playing off the whole thing around blessers, right? And if you look at popular culture, yes, blessers are still very negatively associated in all walks of society, but blessing yourself is something that people are speaking about in common language. We get it, like, be your own blesser. We ran a campaign that says, bless yourself. We had Mary Metcalf tweeting back and saying, how can Vodacom do this? This is a very deep ill in society. And she went straight back to when this whole issue started, like now probably 8 years ago. And she said that we're insensitive to that. And what made it worse was that we launched that campaign at the end of July, going into Women's Month. So it was like, and we pulled it like, you guys probably didn't even hear about it, because we pulled it very quickly. So sometimes, you just land on the wrong side of those conversations. But I think if we were really, truly anchored in who we were as a brand, we would never have tried we wouldn't have taken that chance. Because there's a chance that the grandmother somewhere who's got that experience would look at it in that way, and that's the last thing we need.
Yeah, I think and I'd love to split the two comments that you've made into two. One being the fact that, and I think we have marketing, brand people in marketing, basically. And I think sometimes the frustration is that we want to tell a black story, or we want to tell a South African story, but unfortunately, there's a lot of hindrances in between that, is that either companies aren't ready to tell the story, or they either aren't, yes, they want to have the consumer, but I mean, we're the ones who are giving you the product, so accept it, whether you like it or not. How does one then almost come out of that, or how does one identify or create still, or still have the opportunity to tell that story, you know, being a marketing manager, being within the marketing fraternity as a whole?
I think, Nompumelelo, for me, it's what's the insight? Like, what is the story that you want to tell? Because black people are colorful. We have textures, we have color. So what is it about your brand that you think is going to matter to me? And what is the insight? What is the story that you want to tell to me? And how are you telling it and owning it through your brand? Because you've got to collide the two. You can't, like, I like the example that Abey was giving, because you can't just be saying, I'm popular culture, therefore I'm going to try and do this. There's an insight there around blessing yourself, but how should have Vodacom landed that message differently? Because they could have landed that. The insight is strong, but how you land the message needs to be true to the brand. Yeah, I think black stories can be told by many brands, but it's not all the brands can own all the black stories, but you need to pick the black story that matters to your brand and that really does match up with your brand, because you can't force the conversations. You have to.
Yeah, and I mean, brands, you know, David Ogilvy used to say, the consumer is not an idiot. The second part of that statement is a bit aged now, so I'm not even going to say that. But basically, we're saying, like, we as customers, we are all customers of something. I'm a customer of a lot of stuff. So are you. We're not stupid. We can see through a brand that is saying something that is not backed up by action. So I believe that whatever a brand says and whatever story it tells has to be backed up by real initiative, product innovation, investment, statements, support, and that just makes your promise and your story that you tell that much more consistent. So I think that we're in a world, because of where consumers and customers are at the moment, we as marketers are in a very strong position to influence the product development and the soul of a company, and how that company orientates and what it does in society, because we're the ones that had to tell that story. So no longer are we just going to just tell a story in J because it sounds nice. And that gives us great power. I think this is a fantastic time to be a marketer. You can really go into the guts of a company and change it from the inside.
I think you made such an important statement around the fact that, you know, the story is not just about the brand and branding, like you say, TVC, etc., but it could be about, you know, product innovation. I still go back to the story that you mentioned around the stump. It was an innovation for me, because when I went to the shop, I was like, how you had put it together to the agency was absolutely intelligent, just showing how the convenience of this product is. And we also, I mean, in terms of Vodacom with VodaPay, for example, that has been launched, the ease of that. But I think also, you know, you've mentioned in terms of COVID, I think brands, like we've said, have a responsibility. But what would you say, and I don't know if it's personally to as marketing heads and leaders, what have brands done to actually be catalysts and assistants of COVID-19? Like you say, we felt the impact. But what have brands done to actually assist society to get over, like you say, changing the narrative, showing an optimistic view that, guys, it's going to get better, we're going to mask it up, but, you know, it's going to be great?
Okay, I'll talk about my brand. I won't talk about Vodacom. Because the angas. So, Tastic is South Africa's most loved rice brand. You know, you can make rice exciting, guys. That's the great thing about being a marketer. You can make that chair exciting. So the brand purpose on Tastic is about true generosity. So when COVID started, we're saying to ourselves, okay, so what do you do? So I didn't go out there and say, go get a jab and you're gonna get a beer and go and do, whatever everybody else was doing was linked to their brand. So we then launched a campaign about igniting the true spirit of Ubuntu. Because, and when I delivered the heritage speech, I was talking around, how COVID reminded us as society that Umuntu ngabantu, right? And what is that really? If you translate that, is really around true generosity and looking after your brother and checking in on people. So the one ill around COVID is that it reminded us that we need each other. So with that, we then went back to the root of what this country is all about. I think when I say umuntu ngabantu, everybody's like, I remember that, it evokes this. But it was really, our message was around check in on everybody. Remember, when you have a loaf of bread, does your neighbor have 2 slices of bread? Because that's how we're raised. But we've moved so far away from that we are now individualistic in the way that we do stuff. Whereas we were raised in a community that said, we are because you are. A child was raised by a whole community. So we went into the root of that, and the insights led back to our brand purpose. So it was not forced. So when I stood up and I said, umuntu ngabantu, and people said, yeah, because they believed it. So we emotionally gathered and rallied people around, help each other, because we need each other right now. And that was our story. And through the other stuff that we did, I'm not going to take the whole time trying to sell my brand. Through the other initiatives we did, we then showed consumers how that translates and how the brand is carrying that message. So, because you can't tell consumers you do this and you are this, when as a brand you're not showing up in the same way. So that was our stance on it.
That was amazing. I mean, I love that campaign. And strategically, I love how what you did links back to your brand purpose. That's fantastic. And it's an award-winning campaign. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. You see, Vodacom gives you airtime, Leona. So, I mean, for us, let me just, from our perspective, let me start from the inside out, because I was speaking about how, you've got to do something from inside. Let me speak about what you did for our staff. Everyone is working from home. Fantastic, great, right? It's good for me because I can just work in my son's room. I've got a desk, I have a chair, it all sorted. A lot of people were working from their dining room tables. People were working in their bedrooms. They didn't have chairs. Even this chair that you guys are sitting on right now, try sitting in this chair for 8 hours. It's eventually going to get you back. So one of the things that Vodacom did, it was very generous to its staff. Everyone could go back into the office, take their office chair, take their printer, take their monitor, and you can take it home. To make people more comfortable so that they are able to represent themselves effectively. So that's just one example from an inside-out perspective. Externally, we knew that people being connected to each other because we weren't physically in front of each other was an important thing. So functionally, our brand made sure that we invested in our network, over 5 billion rand in our network, to make sure that we built enough capacity so that we could manage the traffic. So that's a very functional thing. Then we also had product innovation. We have a product called eSchool, which if you're a Vodacom customer, you have access to the entire public school syllabus from grade R to 12 for free. So if you weren't able to go to school, or you didn't have books, or because you're not at school, you guys are not sharing a book. A lot of school children don't have access to books. It was freely available for you. And there's about 1.4 million learners that are registered on that particular platform. And it's completely for free. And I'll tell you, the real pleasure and nugget about purpose-led organizations these days is that there's no longer a distinction between doing the right thing and making money. The cohort of people that used our free services like eSchool spent more time on our network, and they generated up to 25% more for us per customer than the people that never use those services. So it's just, if you work and help society achieve what it needs, you will be rewarded handsomely.
I love that. I think in summary, you've mentioned about be you, be innovative. Don't force to be fresh. I'm going to try and remember that tagline. I think we need that tagline. but I think you've really set the tone of our discussions around brands and them being authentic and true to self. Even like you said, with sometimes a bit of change, you do realize that there's pushback, and you kind of go back to your cocoon of this is who I am. And I don't know if you have parting words before we open, the floor for questions as marketing heads in your respective spaces.
I'll say that word again. Don't try and
Do you have notes to write it down?
yeah, it's don't try and be consistently fresh. Try and be freshly consistent, right? So it's about make sure that you are relevant at all times by being fresh and innovative about how you communicate your consistency, because that's what builds brands, is consistent brand development over time and finding new and fresh ways to express that. What happens with a lot of marketers is we get stuck in doing cool stuff, and then we change, the brand becomes inconsistent, and then you lose that engagement with customers. So that's really, it's as simple as that.
Okay, for me, I would say that it's very important as marketers that you remember brands in any organization. Any market cap of an organization is based on its brands. So you technically are looking after the biggest asset that the company owns. I work for Tiger Brands. Without Tastic, All Gold, Koo, Oros, Albany, All the Beef Jungle, all the brands we've got, there is no Tiger Brands. So we have to treat brands with absolute respect. And do not forget that the brand belongs to the people. I'll share a little antidote. When I started at Tiger Brands, I went for consumer immersions. I love consumer immersions.
Oh, you do?
I love consumers. I want to sit in front of them and listen to them tell me their life stories, right? And I sat with consumers, and they said to me, I asked them about Tastic, and they said, Tastic used to be that girl that comes to she is progressive and she's moved to the burbs, but she used to come to the township every weekend, and we used to hang with her. That's how consumers explain our brands, right? We used to hang around with her. She'll come, have a magwinya, ikota with us, with her jag. But now, she doesn't even come anymore. And for me, I have goosebumps just talking about that, that engagement. I'm like, what do you mean she doesn't come? We don't know who she is anymore. She doesn't even visit. She's left. So, and in that is a loaded statement around how maybe as marketers or the group of marketers before us, or how over time you are removing this brand from its people. Remember, the brand belongs to the people, and it's very important that you navigate the brand within the people, because if it moves away, who's going to buy it?
That's powerful. That's absolutely powerful. I'm going to open the floor. If anybody has questions for our panelists, please just raise your hand and the mic will come towards you guys. Yes, sir. It's coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Wow, okay. So I have so many questions. I won't lie.
It really looks
Yeah,
like it.
I really do. But I'll ask one that's really important to me. And just by the way, wow, you're asking really good questions. Shout out, especially about how our brands either shaping our society or doing their campaigns based on how society is already, right? I think that was really an important question. So currently I'm a final year student studying marketing and advertising at Boston Media House. And what I basically want to ask is, for you guys, right, what would you advise a young man like me? Because Pat mentioned that, you invite these kids, but when they do get the opportunity, they don't come, right? And that's very true. And I feel like Ms. Hazel over here behind me, she mentioned in our brief session that you know, you get these opportunities, but when the time comes, or basically that I'm dying for my generation, right? My generation is really killing me. So what would you guys give advice to me and my generation as a whole to say, what do we need to do to penetrate the market to become the Abeys and the Thembis and the Hazels and the Pats who are bridging the gap, you know, and making opportunities for those who are going to come after us, you know? That's my question.
For me, it's quite simple. It's work harder than you hope. Hard work beats talent, beats a lot of stumbling blocks that you're going to come across. So very basic things, you know. Read more books than anybody else. Get to work earlier than other people. Leave after they've left. Attend the talks. Read the blogs. Do that. You'd be surprised. You know, there's a bell curve for a reason. Is that most of us fit into that middle part of the bell curve. Most of us are similar. Most people are similar in behavior, earning, and it's very rare to find people to be outliers. Be the outlier, and today is a very simple example, right? The majority of the people that were invited to this thing are chilling at home. They're like, man, damn, I wish I could have made that thing, but I've got this priority and that priority, which are real. I'm not taking away from the reality of their lives, but they're not here. And you guys are. So if you keep doing this in every aspect of your life, there's nothing that will stop you.
Just to, I think that's it. But just to add to what Abey's saying is that I always say to all my interns is that you are occupying a seat as a billboard. You know, like in marketing, we are billboard. We do billboards. So I'm saying you are a billboard of what the next person could be. So you are not there just for yourself. You are setting the stage for the next person. Because if you go into the space and do everything that Abey says you must do, you move forward. But when the next person like you comes in, they're believable. They believe that they can. So you're not there just for yourself. You are there for the next person. So I think when you carry that higher purpose with you, that you're not occupying the seat at the table for Thembi, you're occupying the seat at the table to make a difference so that the next Thembi can actually get the seat at the table. Because if you mess up, that's how we're all gonna be seen. That's the billboard, that we are incapable, we are incompetent, we can't. But if you behave in a manner that sets it up for the next person, you are walking around with purpose rather than walking around with fulfilling the self. Your purpose becomes external, and that's very important. Because when it's internal, you're never gonna do everything that Abey is saying, and if it's internal, you're gonna have all the other 100 excuses why you're not here today, why you didn't do that, and why you didn't do that. But when it becomes external, it's beyond you. Find the thing that makes it external for you. Then your journey becomes a very different journey.
Thank you for that. Do we have a second question from somebody? Nobody? Thank you.
Hi guys, thanks so much for sharing all this cool insights with us today. So I'm a marketer by profession, and I totally agree with what you guys were saying. You know, brands need to know who they are, but still need to evolve to remain relevant, stay fresh, but always, you know, consistent in who you are. So there's this thing that's been happening for a couple of years now, influencer marketing. Both of your brands have been involved in it. I think Tastic was probably the latest biggest one I've seen, based on the influencers that I follow. So is that part of brands evolving, or are we just jumping on this thing that's happening because that's what everyone's doing? Everyone's using an influencer, everyone's following an influencer, and is that the right thing to do for brands to to be on the pulse of what's happening, or are we kind of being pushed to do things that the cool kids are doing?
Okay, I'll take that. There's something that Pat said when he opened up, which was quite, important, is that as brands, maybe Abey will remind me because I used to attend his talks. Yes. I used to attend them with Thembi. Like I used to sit there and go, "These guys are so smart. Oh my God, I want to be like. I want to be like those guys." The death of the 30-second ad, and I think consumers are kind of tired of being talked at. They want to be part of creating the conversation and the story. So I'll go back to influencer marketing. And you said something, you said that, Pat, like it's about creating experiences, right? So you wanna be, as a brand, I think we want to be part of the conversation that is happening, rather than try and fight consumers to be in spaces that that they don't want to be in. So, but with that said, it's very important that you choose those spaces right? It's not about just, I'm not going to pick on any influencer. There are influencers that I would never be partnering with because the values and everything that they stand for has got to align with my brand as well. But we are going into those spaces because, again, it's about saying where are the consumers at? And you want to be not interrupting consumers, but being in the spaces that consumers are at so that consumers are receptive to your message. It has to be done, but it has to be done with caution. It has been done terribly. I have made my own mistakes in that space, and I've learned from them, and I've picked up and walked and said, how do I do it better? I think to summarize the answer is choose the spaces. If influencer marketing doesn't work for your brand, walk out. You don't have to do it. But if it's relevant and right for your brand at the time, do it right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think the job of a marketer is to understand which elements in the marketing mix you need to use to inspire the type of action that you require. And the marketing mix is going to change. I mean, in my own career, when I started working, building a website for your brand was amazing. There was no Facebook. I was at Castle. We launched Castle Loud. There was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. Now that medium exists. And I always tell my teams, don't try and be a digital marketer. Try and be a marketer that's digital. And I'm only using digital because everyone is like, digital is such a big new thing now. But I could say the same thing, be a marketer that's TV, be a marketer that's radio, be a marketer that's completely independent of how you're going to deliver that particular message. Know what works at which particular point in time, and make your investment decisions based on where you're going to get the best return on investment. The best marketers are the ones that know what to use when. It's like when you're playing golf, you've got the clubs that you can use to play different shots. That's exactly how you should be thinking about as a marketer.
What's your handicap, Abey?
Yeah, I'm going to Investec. I better start playing golf again.
Do we have a last question? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mine is not I'm glad you asked that question about influencer marketing. It's something that I've been doing some reading on as well. I'm Sia, by the way. I'm also a PR professional. So I was reading this article about how brands tend to lose their storytelling aspect of selling the message through influencers. There's this one campaign we're working on, and one of the influencers was really struggling to find the caption that actually sells the story or sells the message. They just want to create content because so many influencers are great content creators. They come up with nice pictures, nice videos, but when you read, there's no story. You can't actually say this person is actually connected to their brand, or they resonate with what message the brand is trying to sell. So how can brands actually try to to identify influencers that actually are relevant to the kind of messages that they are selling. And secondly, I want to ask about, like, do you really think like it's wise to push more short-term relationship with influencers, or have more like brand ambassadorship kind of relationship with influencers, so that you have people who are consistently selling a specific message for a specific brand? Because sometimes you find someone is posting something for Dove, and then a month later they're posting something of a competitor brand or to Dove, and it's really kind of confusing to the consumer that actually what brand do you resonate with, you know? So like this article I was reading about, like it was on like building long-term relationships with people that you've identified that this person actually like resonate with my brand, and they can actually help me carry out my brand message.
So I mean, I think you've got to think about influencers as just another medium. And sometimes that medium is relevant, sometimes it's not relevant. It's got its pros and cons. There are some influencers that have got a very niche market, but they're very credible to that particular market, and they might help you deliver the message you need to that particular market, because those are the people that you need to influence. And there's some influencers who have been consistent in terms of what their brands are, and that's what people buy into them. And you just need to leverage off that. So I think there's no one answer to what you've just done. We've just launched a new package, a new product called Every Data, and we had a beautiful 45-second TV commercial that was a kind of explaining this thing. And the research came back, and it said that the message didn't really land as well as it could have. We could have done better. And then there was an influencer called Dev Don Did It, who's kind of really comedian type of guy. One of our regions, not even the brand team that briefed this guy. It was one of the regional teams that briefed him, and he did the skit where he's talking to himself. So he's acting as a husband and a wife, or a husband, a boyfriend and a girlfriend at the same time, and he's speaking about this product in such an amazing way. And I was thinking, damn, that should have been the ad. But he worked for that particular product. He might not work for another one. So I think we just need to do the due diligence to understand the influencers' market, what they do, the consistency. Sometimes you don't even need to work with an influencer for a year. Maybe just that one single clip or that one activation is all you need them to do. Then they must move on. So it's all relative. But do the work and think of them as just another media.
Okay, thank you so much, Abey, for that. I hope influencer marketing, in due time, I'm sure it's going to change. Because, I mean, I think influencer marketing was always there. There was always brand ambassadors. It just then gotten heightened because of, it was enabled by your Instagrams and so forth. And I think it will always be there. I think, though, what will identify, though, is that the credibility will come in and an objective of campaigns, because we almost blanket influencer marketing. Any campaign you have, influencer marketing, no, why? We don't necessarily ask that question, and that's why you'll find that it's either wrong partnerships with brands and influencers, or you find that the credibility of the brand because the narrative is also held by the influencer themselves. We're going to tell the story of this brand, and is it the way you want them to tell the story? So thank you so much for those questions.
Look what Jesus did for Christianity. And what Muhammad did for Islam. They were influencers.
Exactly. So they've always been
it's
there.
Always been there.
It's just been heightened because of the platform that we're in. So for me, it's a passion project. I've been an influencer marketing manager, so I love that space because I'm able to identify, is it going to work, is it not going to work? I tell Thembi, who's my boss, to say, aye. We can't have it in everything, So thank you very much. Thank you very much to our panelists. It's been an absolutely amazing conversation. We are going to close, and we are going to have a 5-minute break before our second panelists come on stage, and Pat actually will be hosting that session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.